Hello, and welcome to the HIPAA Vault Show, where we discuss all things HIPAA compliance and the cloud. My name is Adam Zenadine, and I'm joined today by CTO and founder of HIPAA Vault, Gil Vidals. Hi, Gil.
Hey, I'm looking forward to today's episode.
Me as well. Last week, we talked about HIPAA when it comes to emailing, Outlook, and Gmail. This week, we're going to talk about WordPress hosting. And in particular, we have a question that we get asked quite a bit. And today's question is, what is the least expensive way to make my WordPress site HIPAA compliant? So, Gil, do you have any initial thoughts on budget when it comes to WordPress sites and HIPAA?
Yeah, I do. And things have changed over the years, but it was and still is somewhat expensive to do that, generally speaking, versus a website that's a GoDaddy or one of these really inexpensive hosting platforms where they don't protect sensitive information. You can get it for probably less than $50 a month. But a WordPress site that's properly secured, you're talking about typically hundreds of dollars per month. And HIPAA Vault is got a solution that's under $100 a month. So that's why we introduced that, because a lot of medical practitioners, they just didn't have the budget to pay too much for that. So we introduced that recently.
Interesting. And yeah, I think we were talking a little bit before the call, and I get this question quite a bit because, HIPAA Vault is a managed security service provider, and we specialize in HIPAA compliant hosting. So as you can imagine, this question comes up a lot. And the way I like to break it down is start first with the why of your website. And so what's the purpose of the website? What are you looking to ultimately host? There could be a number of different things that the website is there to achieve, right? So it could be based on the idea of building trust and credibility for your brand awareness. It could be, the trust and credibility part could also involve, well, our brand, but then is our brand aligned with HIPAA practices and security? The other area to consider is providing information to your patients. Is the website there to primarily be a source of information on, looking up symptoms and things like that? You have pages for specific conditions that the visitors might have and they're looking to get information on. Then the other thing is the website more of a lead generation, lead conversion tool, where you're going to have contact forms, and then those contact forms are going to ultimately lead to more patients for your healthcare business. And then moving on to maybe more complex purposes might be your website has some sort of portal functionality in it where users are going to log in and access that information. And another option is, and this comes up a lot when it's something to do with medical supplies or pharmacy sales, e-commerce. So you're using your website to directly sell products to the internet. So there are a couple of reasons why you might want to host your website, and depending on that, the levels of security that need to be enabled for your hosting can vary. Gil, could you kind of align those to what kind of hosting might be needed in different circumstances?
Sure. My first comment, first of all, it's a really good summary of the reasons and different types of use cases for websites. And I would like to say that HIPAA compliance is really a binary situation. Either you're HIPAA compliant or you're not. So there's not shades of gray where you can kind of, on a HIPAA compliance scale 1 to 10, you can score a 5. It doesn't work that way. Either you're completely compliant or you're not at all. And so really you have to decide, does my website need to be HIPAA compliant? And you should save some money. If you're a medical practitioner that just has a brochure website that just advertises your location on Google Maps with a contact form, and, here's where I'm located, here's my bio, the therapist has their bio. That's what we call brochureware. There's no reason to go for expensive, HIPAA compliance. Now, having said that, though, there are cases where a medical practitioner does have a form, and they are accepting people to put in whatever they want, like a very general, like a notes area. And that can get you into trouble, because in the note area, your patient or your potential patient might type in all sorts of patient protected health information that they're allowed to do that because they own the information. But once they submit it, you have to carefully think about that. Where does that information go? Where is it residing? Well, it's going to be residing on the web host server somewhere. And now you put yourself in a position where you better be HIPAA compliant, because you are holding protected health information. So be careful if you have forms. Don't just allow a wide open text field where they can type whatever they want. You put specifically what you want. So I went a little bit on a tangent there, but I did want to mention there are cases that Adam and I have seen, many cases where we get called from companies that they realize they are not going to have protected health information, but they're in the healthcare field, the healthcare industry, and they want to have a HIPAA compliant website, even if they don't have the patient information, because they see value in that from a marketing perspective. They see that if they have that, then it gives them more credibility, which goes to what you mentioned earlier, Adam. So you have to think about all those things. It's not always strictly a case of, oh, I don't have patient information, therefore I don't need this HIPAA compliance. Well, maybe that's true, but maybe, how many sales are you going to lose?
I remember, like, to use an analogy of a business card, that back in the day, when I used to do a lot of outdoor sales, and I'd have a business card, and often when you're meeting a salesman, you would make some sort of distinction as to, like, just inadvertently, like, did they have a really thin, flimsy business card, or did they have something robust with maybe laminate and stuff like that? I mean, that's a while back, but it did help in some way to increase the trust and credibility, even though it was pretty superficial at that level anyway.
Yeah, that's a good analogy, right? The ones that were really cool laminate cards, I'm going to keep this one, and then the other ones that are really thin, you just throw that one away. Yeah. So that's a great analogy. So the credibility of having a HIPAA compliant website where you can put a seal there, like a HIPAA Vault seal, then that helps. So I think that answered what you were asking.
Yeah.
Adam.
So moving on a little bit to the maybe more, not complex, but like more functionality based websites that are not necessarily just brochureware. So the brochureware ones, you could probably go for a low cost of entry hosting plan, $10, $20, $30 a month. But if you wanted something a little bit more,
I'd like to comment on that, Adam. I want to comment on that a little bit, because if you go somewhere like, say, GoDaddy or Wix, but especially GoDaddy does a great job of marketing, and they will start you really low to get you in the door. They'll get you as low as you can imagine. Super sale, and here you go, and you're all excited. But we've heard from many of our customers that we've gotten from GoDaddy that once you're in the door there, they have lots of features that you would take for granted, they charge you for them. So by the time you're done with your actual site that's working the way you want it to work, with the Google Map and maybe a chat function or whatever, by the time you're done with that, you're looking at, $50 or more at least. So you start off at $5 or $10, and then when you turn around, you're at $50 at least, maybe $100. So keep that in mind, that just because that's the advertised price doesn't mean it's going to stay there. And then there's Wix and HostGator, and there's a bunch of other ones. But these are not services that will offer HIPAA compliancy, and they don't want to offer that. It's not that they're incapable or they're bad. They're great companies, and they do one thing very well, and that's selling these inexpensive web platforms
to every industry.
Yeah, without compliance. They don't want to enter that game because compliance is more expensive, and so that's their playing field, and it's good for that. So if you're confident that you don't need HIPAA compliance, I definitely would save the money and go to one of these sites. I think they do a good job.
Okay, and then for the use cases where there might be a WordPress site that does receive patient information through it, then what kind of recommendations would you make there?
Well, I think the first level I've seen companies that medical practitioners and healthcare app developers that really are on a razor thin budget, and they say to themselves, well, I'm paying next to nothing at HostGator or Wix or GoDaddy. So what they do is they'll say, well, I do have to collect patient information, so I want to do it with this form, this intake form. And then what they'll do is they'll go to a place that has secure forms, and then they'll just link to that. So you go to the web page, fill out this form, it's just a link. Or they embed the form so it looks like the form is on their website, but it's actually an embedded form, and the form actually exists on this other secure platform. And so that's kind of a hybrid approach. So now you're paying two hosting providers, one that has your brochureware site that doesn't have sensitive information, and then the second hosting provider is holding the form and the data. So now you're paying two bills for that. And to me, the way I think, although it does fulfill the HIPAA checkbox, but now you've got two vendors to deal with, and I like to have one vendor instead of two.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a plug-in.
Well, what are they doing there effectively? Mm-hmm. Like when you sign up for a HIPAA form, is it anything on the back end that they're doing? Or?
Well, what they're claiming is that form will reside in a HIPAA compliant environment. Mm-hmm. And so they guarantee that the form is being collected in an encrypted transaction.
And yeah, sorry, I just remembered as well for the viewers and listeners, we did an actual dive into HIPAA compliant forms as well in one of our previous episodes. So mm-hmm. Definitely check that out after this.
Yeah, that's good to check out. But I don't think using a form only company that attaches to your website. I think if you cross the line where you realize I'm going to have HIPAA compliant data I need to manage, then I would go for a fully managed HIPAA compliant service where you have your whole site there.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. Again, why? Well, you're doubling, you're adding two bills instead of one, and you've got two phone calls to make. And don't forget, when you get two vendors, what I've seen happen a lot in the hosting industry, and it's kind of sad because the hosting industry, like a lot of tech firms, they want to get you off the phone as quickly as they can. So when you call in with an issue, they're rapidly trying to figure out. So a lot of times what will happen, they'll say, well, it wasn't us, it's your other provider. And then you call the other provider, and they'll say, oh, no, it's not us, it's your other provider. And it's just if you're not really technical, you're like, I don't know who to believe now. Yeah. They're both pointing this way. Mm-hmm. And so having two providers that are technical, unless you're really technical, you're going to be sandwiched in between. And you're not going to like it.
Yeah, I think I've seen some of those tickets sometimes where it's one hosting provider, mm-hmm. the support channel for one hosting provider, talking to the support channel to another hosting provider, and it's like two mirrors.
Right. So again, just as a recap, I don't like that method of doing, although technically speaking, yes, having a form provider that's HIPAA compliant will fulfill the check mark, but I think it comes with too much baggage. And it's too much potential issue. So of course, if you talk to the form, if you call the form provider yourself, they'll say, "Oh no, it works great and people love it." But you have to just make your own decision on that.
Okay, so we've reviewed the entry level non-HIPAA options, and then the almost mid-level where you're protecting a specific WordPress plugin. What about if a client or a customer is concerned with getting their whole website HIPAA compliant and having a business associate agreement in place, that's definitely something we offer, right? Is that something that budget-wise can be accounted for in any way?
Yeah, this is a good thing to talk about for a minute, and I know we're coming to a close here shortly. Mm-hmm. But keep in mind, as soon as a company, a hosting provider, cloud service provider has to sign a business associate agreement, they're taking on liability. What the associate agreement basically says is, look, you, Mr. Healthcare app developer or medical professional, you have patient information that's sensitive. And then the hosting company is saying, and we acknowledge that, and we're going to work together, we're going to be connected at the hip. If something goes wrong, we can't point fingers to each other like, well, it's your fault, all this stuff. They're both going to be accountable and responsible for that. That's what the business associate agreement really does. And so any company that's going to take on that liability, just think about it. In today's world with inflation, no one wants to do that for $10 a month. It's just not worth it, right? Mm-hmm. So you're looking at spending considerably more just for the liability, not for the technical reasons, which are expensive in and of themselves, but just for the liability, the company has to be able to generate enough revenue to be able to, support that effort. So I think whenever that BAA comes up and you're signing that, it means you're dealing with a company who knows what they're doing. They've accepted that responsibility, and they're going to invest in all the security tools and the engineers and compliance manager and everything else that comes along with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that HIPAA hosting ranges, in prices from in the hundreds to in the thousands per month, right? So we at HIPAA Vault, we do offer one of the most affordable plans on the market. So feel free to check out our plans. We have a plan for you on HIPAAVault.com. Specifically for WordPress as well. We've got really great plans for you to host your WordPress site. Any other considerations, Gil?
Well, I was just saying, don't, reach out to us. If you have some questions, just feel free to reach out, especially to Adam. He's not, as you can tell here, he's not going to be down your throat trying to sell you something. He'll just answer some questions. If that's all it is, that's fine. We want to help the community out as well. So if you have some questions about the HIPAA compliant solution, infrastructure, and cloud services, we'd be happy to help you out.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was just going to mention podcast@HIPAAVault.com is a great place to email us or tweet us at HIPAA Hosting. Other than that, make sure to subscribe and please leave us a review if you enjoyed this episode. Until next time, thanks for stopping by.